So I took it upon myself to go out of my way and to do a little bit of, how would you say, investigating, mini investigating, not deep investigating. But I kind of wanted to look at, other than Los Angeles, you see pictured here, despite the billions from tax measures, LA County's homeless problem is getting a lot worse, and we know that. And so I have done videos about how Los Angeles looks. It looks just like this in the downtown of Los Angeles, and it has spread it outside of downtown Los Angeles to other areas in the city or in the county of Los Angeles. And you'll see lovely luxury tall high-rise units of buildings, and just under those you will see, under the freeways, the underpass, in alleyways, um, streets that you're not really um, driving through. Um, Occasionally maybe you drive through them. Around the corner, around the bend, you'll see tents. You'll see people that are homeless, and you'll see sometimes it'll be like in areas where it'll be just out on the outskirts of a sprawling city skyline, and you will see images of Los Angeles County, Los Angeles City looking like this. And this is how it looks. And I wanted to shift gears and compare what I'm looking at here in Los Angeles County and look at the poverty that has happened in parts of Asia, Asian countries. Like Hong Kong has 20% of residents that live in poverty. And so that recently, this right here, said that the poverty line rose to 1.35 million in 2016 despite its economic growth. And if you see, you'll see like really shabby buildings, and it looks as though um, the buildings have been there for a long period of time. And it'll talk about, all these different graphs. These are like images. But what I noticed that I was looking at was how people were living, believe it or not, in small cages. And they were living like, it could be like a family of, maybe a family of four. Um, um, and all of the people live in that one area that's as large as a parking lot, or it could be four families that live in that area, and they each have their own cage to put their clothes and their belongings in. And this says this is the growing poverty in Hong Kong, the Origin Project. And so you'll see people who live, like this. And, I guess people who are, like working on the street. And I noticed that poverty is not just here in America. It seems as though it's in a lot of other places, and that other places, other countries, the elderly is ignored and often forgotten about, and they're in deep poverty, and you'll see people living next to nothing, and it's sad. Um, and these are other countries where people will be made to feel like they have to work just to make ends meet. And so you notice how everybody's things are kind of stacked on top of one another because that's the way that they live in these other places. And so I was also looking at North Korea. Now, Korea is, I know you've seen the president Kim Jong Un. It says poverty in North Korea is believed to be extensive through reliable statistics are though the reliable statistics are hard to come by due to the lack of a reliable research, pervasive censorship, and the extensive media manipulation. Because in these countries, a lot of times they have heavy censorship and they don't want people knowing what's happening in the country. And if you tell, you can be heavily penalized if you're from that country and you're trying to speak on what kinds of issues are going on in those countries. And this right here says poverty in North Korea has farmers stealing feces to grow food. This was out of Business Insider. And so I guess they have to have someone that is able to speak the language and may be familiar with that country. Maybe they were even born there, um, able to go in and see what kind of living situation is going on. And this is North Korea. It shows um, photos that were um, basically, I guess they didn't want people. This is the president there. Poverty in North Korea. And so I guess everything is so secretive, but I've heard about this before, so it's not unfamiliar to me what has gone on in some of these other countries. This one says poverty in the U.S. is almost as bad as in the North Korea, and you're right about that because we have our own set of issues here. And uh, what my thing is I noticed how it resembles um, very much what we've gone through here in LA, the homeless situation. What I noticed is, you look at these pictures and you wonder how could people let people uh, go to this point, to where they have no place to go and no food, or they're, really like living next to nothing. And when you look at other countries and you see how they live in similar conditions, and so my conclusion to some of it is that you have people that are far removed and they're insensitive. They don't really see these people as human. Maybe they feel that, they put themselves in that position. Some people are very greedy. I believe that there are people that they're very into themselves and they're insensitive about other lives. And when you're a person that is far removed from the issues that other people are experiencing, it's easy to see uh, that, like here it says LA declares homeless state of emergency, dedicates 100 million, but you don't see anything really getting better. It seems like it just continues to go down. And what I noticed recently is they were saying that they were going to stop the unemployment benefits, and they said it could put 20 million people at a disadvantage because you already had people that were like this and people who were fighting to not be in this predicament. They didn't want to end up like homeless like this. But now you're going to put people in a worse disadvantage because um, you have this pandemic, the coronavirus. Some people have, well, more than some people have died, millions, in the thousands, and millions of people, probably more, who knows, are infected. And then you have thousands of people that have died. 500,000 is what they say that have died. And then you have people that were like this before the pandemic. And we know this is not the safest way to live, but how can you social distance? How can you, you know, we were not as a country prepared for this type of catastrophe and then state of emergency, and to look at all the poverty that is happening here. And then when you look at some of the other countries and their problems, and you start realizing that this is not just happening in one place, it's happening in a lot of places. And then it makes me realize just how something along the lines is correlating, where you see all of these countries have high concentrations of poverty, and you have like a little bit of money is being distributed only to certain amounts of people, and they're not getting that much. And then you have this small group here that is living wealthy, and no money is funneling down to any of these people. And you keep hearing them say over and over again that they're going to make provisions for people who are living like this to try to make things better. And it just seems like it gets worse and worse and worse. And they have these little soup kitchens and these lines of people who are living next to nothing, and squalid living. And so that's what makes me see that um, it is a systemic problem, but it's not just in one country, it's everywhere. It seems like everywhere there's something where people are suffering. And to bring it to the US, it almost looks scary, to the point to where it's scary, to where it's very similar to a third world country. We're supposed to be the richest country that I've heard, but yet we're living very similar to some of the countries that you would think are not well, maybe over the years they've become more advanced, but look what they have also done is they've put their people in like cages, small living quarters. They've sort of, you have these cities that have the real ultra wealthy, and places where soon are going to be so expensive, such as what I was looking at earlier today. I don't know. I just noticed that there was a huge problem with this. It seems as though it's not in one place, that it's in a lot of places where people, this is Japan, 1 in 6 people in Japan are now poor, and that's out of CNN. And so you have people that are living in situations where they have nothing, and people can walk past this every day and it doesn't bother them. They don't think to say, what can we do about this? And you see the sign, these people here are also money for life, not for war. And you see that people in these countries are also going through what almost looks to be similar as to what we're having happen here in the US in some ways. It's very scary. It seems as though the world is becoming like a dystopia, where people are living below the poverty level, and they're accepting kids being in poverty and people being in poverty, and it's accepted, and it's looked at as, it's instead of a problem where they don't see it as somewhere they've pulled money or resources away from people so that they don't have access to just the basic needs. They look at it as, you shouldn't have did this, or you fell through the cracks, or it's their problem. And that's the way it's looked at. And so, some of these pictures are different pictures, but why is poverty on the rise in Japan? And so there's been some articles about it. And so I know this is a different country, it's different culture, but I notice even in other places, I've noticed that it seems as though it's easy for people to walk past people. They say one thing, but they do something totally different. And it seems like something is very wrong in society when we can allow people to live like this. And so this is Los Angeles. I'm going to bring it back to where we were in the beginning. But if you have people living like this, and then you look just over the tents and you see people living in high rises and they can live like that, it's a huge contrast, a huge difference. And it shows you, it seems as though you notice that these people are from different backgrounds, different walks of life, but the one thing they have in common is poverty that you see here. And what I noticed about all of this is that here, what is supposed to be the richest country in the world, homelessness, it says, jumps 12% across Los Angeles County. And so, let me see, I'm going to view that page. I don't know if that's an older page. So that actually, believe it or not, this page was in 2019, and this is the year of 2020. So it says homelessness jumps 12% across Los Angeles County. The number of homeless people counted across LA County jumped to 12% over the past year, nearly 59,000, with more young and old residents. And so families on the streets, officials said this on a Tuesday, and so the majority of homeless were found within the city of Los Angeles, which saw a 16% increase, 36,300, and Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority said in presenting January's annual count to the County Board of Supervisors. The increase was registered a year after the previous tally found a slight decrease in the county's homeless population. The problem was apparent just outside the board meeting, where a man and a woman were camped out on a small patch of lawn. Tents regularly pop up on the pavement outside nearby City Hall, and hundreds of people live in makeshift shanties that line the entire blocks in the notorious neighborhood known as Skid Row. So the county's Homeless Service Authority said it helped 21,631 people move into permanent housing during 2018, a pace that would have helped rapidly end homelessness if economic pressure had not simultaneously pushed thousands more out of their homes. And so, where are we now? This is this article. We're in the middle of a pandemic, coronavirus. Many people have lost jobs that had jobs, and we're being told recently that the coronavirus pandemic emergency funds will probably end at the end of June, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, and that it may not be extended, or maybe it will, because now the numbers of people who are infected have risen, and we have 500,000 people already worldwide that have died of coronavirus. And we're here, this was 2019, and we're in the year of 2020, a major pandemic, which they have no vaccine for, and they're still currently searching for the answers. And every day, it's every week a developing situation, and there's new circumstances among all the others. And so this is where we're at. And it just seems like all of this is somehow connected. That you have in some places where people are okay to live wealthy and footloose and fancy free, while others suffer. And that's what you're seeing in these countries. It's the same thing. You know, they can see people that may look like them, they may come from the same culture as them, but if it's the haves and the have-nots, and that's what we're seeing in these places where people can look past the people that they see on the street that are struggling and have no place to stay, or they live in small, small cages with their clothes in what looks like a little shoebox living. Um, and everything is packed together and crammed together, and or they're living on the streets. And you see people that are almost fighting for some of the same issues that we're fighting for right here in the US. It's scary. It's really scary. And that's what I've learned this to be. How it all connects. It's just so scary to see people suffering. And they're from all walks of life. And what I've noticed over the years, the poverty is growing, not even just in one country, but in many other countries. You're seeing the same thing. What was scary to me is I remember hearing Donald Trump say to Kim Jong-un that he liked the way that he governed his country. Yet it's clearly shows that here that North Korea has a huge problem with poverty, and that money is not really um, being distributed well to people who need it. It's more about buying military equipment or funding police departments and militarizing them, um, uh, stealing money from people out of cities so that you can go to gambling casinos and get chips and play your card games, building high rises that are overly expensive, that people can't afford to live in these luxury apartments. And you find that a lot of these people are looking at empty apartments that they can't afford to live in, and they have to live on the streets. And that's what has happened here in California and in LA and in many other cities like Seattle, that I think there's poverty there. Detroit, there's definitely poverty there. Atlanta, it's like everywhere you look, there's people that have been foisted onto the street. Not because of drug issues. That's how it used to be. It was mental illness and drug issues. Yes, you do have people that have those issues, but those are some of the symptoms. But you also have families that are on the street. You have children on the street. You have people who are on the street simply because they can't afford the rents. They're rent burdened. They're paying almost more than a third of their income. And now you have this high level of unemployment. And they basically made it seem as though they were going to just leave people on the wayside and leave them to die. And this is a travesty in and of itself. To be from the richest country is what they always tout. But yet you see people living like this. If we're the richest country, then why is it that you would allow people to live in these conditions, and you find it a problem to help people get back on their feet and families get into affordable housing, and then housing that some people are already in, they're barely making it, and they're hoping that they don't end up in a position like this where they're on the street. So, having said this, I'm gonna let this video go. I'm gonna show some photos. I'm just flipping through, but this is downtown of Los Angeles, and this is how it looks. It looks really, really sad. But if you just pay attention and look over these tents, this is what you see right here, where people are living, the high living, and some of those buildings have a lot of empty units, but a lot of the people can't afford it, and they end up right down below here. So I just want you to see that's what it looks like. And so it's really sad. And I'm sure this is recent. This was a 2019 photo right here. And, there's article upon article where people are really living in squalid living situations. And I'm not going to read it because I know you've heard me read multiple articles before that are in relation to the problems that we have. But I really do believe there's a great disservice to a lot of people. And there's a connection with all of this. It just looks like the haves and the have-nots. And people are more about their money. Like during the pandemic, you have people that they're willing to risk the lives of innocent children and people to see them die because they're more concerned about the economy. And if you don't have the people here that doing the jobs you don't want to do, how is the economy going to work at all? When you have all these people that lost their jobs, and some jobs are not even able to open, and most of them are going out of business. And so this is a thing that people don't get. They don't understand these people who live in these high, ultra rich, luxury living type folk that don't work those minimum wage jobs. They don't get it. They don't seem to get that if we're sick, if we don't have any place to live, and you are not going to have an economy either. Anyway, with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. And if there's, you might hear background noises because when I do my videos, a lot of times I do them where I am. And, my window is open and you can hear cars or you can hear people and you might can hear things. But it's just sad that I just thought I would do this video because I made the comparison because I recently had saw some documentaries and looked at the way some people live in other countries, and I noticed that it seemed like there was some very stark similarities. Anyway, having said that, I'm going to let this video go. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening.